Chapter 3. The Howling Dog. Einstein was looking at some photographs of Jupiter showing the giant red spot on the planet's surface when his 8-year-old brother Dennis burst into his room. Dennis had a scraped knee and an eye that was beginning to puff up. "What happened to you?" Einstein asked. "I've just had a fight with my ex-friend Chuck," Dennis said. "He wanted to use my baseball glove and I told him he couldn't, so he grabbed the glove and I punched him. Then he started to hit me, but I got my glove back anyway. Chuck's bigger than I am, but you're bigger than he is, so I want you to go out and beat him up." "Not so fast, Dennis," Einstein said. "I'm sorry Chuck hit you, but after all, you hit him first. He shouldn't have grabbed your glove, but maybe you could have handled him another way. After all, size and brains don't always go together." "Well, what should I do?" asked Dennis. "Perhaps you could tell him your glove is new and that you're just working it in. That way you can still stay friends with him without lending him your glove. Do you think that'll work?" "I don't know," said Einstein, "but you can try. Just like I try to handle Pat Burns in my class. I could fight him if I had to, but I'd rather use my brains." "Who's Pat Burns?" asked Dennis. "Pat is the biggest boy in my class. He's also the meanest. Everybody calls him Pat the Brat. He's got a friend named Herman who's the second meanest kid in the class. The best way to deal with them is by thinking, not fighting." Just then the front doorbell rang. When Einstein went down to open the door, he was surprised to see the very person he'd just been talking about. Pat the Brat. Pat held a lead in his hand. At the other end of the lead was a large brown mongrel dog. The dog growled when Einstein opened the door. Einstein looked at Pat, then at the dog, then back to Pat. "Hello, Pat. How are things?" When Einstein leaned forward to pat the dog on the head, the dog suddenly began to howl. Einstein leapt back. He was so startled that his glasses slipped down to the end of his nose. He pushed them back and asked, "Why is that dog howling like that?" Pat laughed in a nasty way. "Einstein," Pat said, "this is my dog Rocky. Say hello to Rocky." "Hello, Rocky," Einstein said. Rocky kept on howling. Einstein looked back at Pat. "Well, it's nice been having this chat with you and Rocky, but I've got to go now. Be seeing you." "Just a minute," Pat said. "I want to talk to you." "I've really got to go, Pat. Maybe some other time." "Now," said Pat, and he clenched his fist slightly. "Right," Einstein said with a sigh. I've just remembered that I have got time to talk to you now." Pat sat down on the front steps. He motioned Einstein to sit down beside him. Then he pointed his finger at Rocky. Rocky suddenly stopped howling. In spite of himself, Einstein became very interested. "How do you do that, Pat?" he asked. You just pointed your finger at the dog and he stopped howling? What's the trick?" "That's for you to figure out, Einstein," Pat said with a sly smile. "You're supposed to be the genius in the class, So we're going to play a little guessing game. The winner is allowed to punch the loser 5 times in the arm. Ready to play? I don't think I want to play, said Einstein. I've really got to go. Either play now or pay now, said Pat, punching his right fist into his left hand. All right, said Einstein. Pat wasn't smart, but he was strong. It was easier to outwit Pat than to fight him. I always like a good game. What are the rules? The rules are simple, said Pat. All you have to do is explain to me how I can make Rocky howl or stop howling. Like this. Pat pointed his finger at Rocky. The dog began to howl. Pat pointed his finger again. The dog stopped howling. Try to make the dog howl, Einstein, said Pat. Einstein pointed his finger at Rocky. The dog just yawned. Einstein pointed his finger again. This time Rocky scratched his ear with his back leg. I'll give you an hour to think it over, said Pat. I'll be back with my pal Herman so that he can be a witness when the winner collects. Pat turned and led Rocky away. He looked back at Einstein over his shoulder and said, Remember, 1 hour. Einstein watched them walk down the street. Just before they got to the end of the block, he saw Herman jump out of some bushes and join Pat and the dog. Einstein whipped out his pocket binoculars and saw Herman take a shiny object out of his mouth and put it in his pocket. The shiny object was a whistle. But had Herman been blowing a whistle? Einstein hadn't heard one. Einstein sat down on the steps. His glasses slipped down again, but he didn't notice. He was trying to remember something that his father had told him about animals. Pat, Herman, and Rocky returned to Einstein's house in an hour. Pat spoke first. Ready to give in now, Einstein? He asked. Wait a minute, replied Einstein. First, I'd like you to meet my kid brother. Dennis, say hello to Pat and Herman. Hello, Dennis said. Hello, kid, Pat said. Herman didn't say anything. You ready now, Einstein? Pat asked. Are you sure you want to go through with this game? Asked Einstein. Sure, I'm sure, Pat said. You're trying to back out of it. No, Einstein said. I just want you to remember that the punches were your idea. I remember, Pat said. Ready to get hit? Not so fast, Einstein replied. I think I know how you got your dog to howl. And if I'm right, you're the one who will have to pay. Can you solve the puzzle? How did Pat get Rocky to howl? I'm waiting, said Pat, and I don't think you know the answer. That's the trouble, Pat, Einstein said. You don't think. You're just wasting time, Einstein, Herman said. You don't really know why Rocky howled. Oh, you think I'm just whistling in the dark? Asked Einstein. Whistling? Herman said, suddenly looking uncomfortable. What's that got to do with it? Oh, whistling has a lot to do with it, Einstein answered. For example, let's take the whistle you have in your pocket. It's what's called a dog whistle. A dog whistle is so high-pitched that people can't hear the sound, but dogs can hear it even from a distance. Herman looked at Pat. I guess he knows how we did it, he said. I think I do, Einstein said. You must have trained Rocky to howl when the whistle stopped. Herman, you were watching Pat from behind the bushes. Whenever you saw Pat point at Rocky, you blew the whistle, and Rocky howled. But when I pointed at Rocky, you didn't blow the whistle, and Rocky didn't howl. Okay, Einstein, you beat me this time, but wait until next time. He pointed to his arm. Are you going to collect your punches? I'll take an IOU on them, Pat, Einstein said. I'll tell you a joke instead. Why is your dog like a tree? Why? Pat asked. Because they both have a bark. I think Pat would rather be punched, Dennis said.